Because some things aren't meant to be said, David. They're meant to be done. Just like everything else I've ever done for you. I felt my own voice come out steady over the phone, despite the tremor in my hands. On the other end, my son's silence weighed heavier than any burden I'd ever known. "Can we talk? In person?" David finally asked, his voice thick with a feeling I couldn't quite place. Remorse? Shame? Or just the apartment? "Of course," I replied with a calm I didn't feel. "But this time, son, I'd prefer if you came to me." I hung up the phone and looked around my small apartment. The peeling walls, each chipped layer a whispered story, held more memories than any library. The worn sofa where I'd so often fallen asleep, sewing uniforms and party dresses for clients, dreaming of my boy's bright future. The coffee table, still faintly marked with crayon from when David did his homework while I cooked dinner. Now everything felt different, as if those walls, that sofa, that little table knew something had changed forever. You must be wondering how we got here. How a son can push away his own mother? How a lifetime of sacrifices could be forgotten so easily? Everything really started to change about 6 months ago. That Sunday afternoon with the bread pudding still warm in my hands. But the signs, if I was truly honest with myself, had been there much longer. Ever since David married Jessica 8 years ago, I'd felt small shifts. At first, they were subtle. Shorter phone calls, visits that needed to be scheduled weeks in advance, comments about how I spoiled Gabriel too much when he was born. "Mom, you really don't need to bring a present every time you visit," David would say as I unwrapped a new toy car for my 2-year-old grandson. "Let Grandma, Daddy," Gabriel would chime in, already clutching the toy, with that smile that just melted my heart. Jessica would watch from the kitchen, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. She came from a very different kind of family. Her parents, Sharon and Richard, were university professors. They had a big house in the fancy part of town, took international trips for vacation, talked about wines and books I'd never even heard of. Me, in my simple dress, my hands marked by decades of sewing. I always felt out of place at their family gatherings. But I made the effort. For David. For Gabriel. "Carol, you really should try exercising like Sharon," Jessica suggested once, while her mother showed off photos from her recent trip to Paris. "It's so good for your health and your posture." I just smiled and nodded, knowing my day started at 5 in the morning and ended far too late for any gym. My gym? The 4 flights of stairs in this building. Even retired as a secretary, I still sewed to supplement my income. When Gabriel started school, things got worse. Jessica and David decided to enroll him in a super expensive bilingual school, a suggestion from her parents. We could help with the tuition, I offered one evening at dinner. "No need, Mom." David cut in, a beat too quick. "Jessica's parents have already offered." I swallowed, a dryness in my throat, and kept eating, acutely aware of Jessica's gaze, as if my offering was an insult, as if my money wasn't clean enough for my own grandson. It was around that time I started to notice how Gabriel would repeat certain phrases, clearly not his own. "Grandma, why's your house so small?" he'd asked once. "Mommy says you could live somewhere nicer if you didn't waste money on silly things." Silly things. The presents for my grandson. The flowers I brought to brighten their house. The bread pudding David loved so much as a boy. I remember one specific afternoon when I went to pick Gabriel up from school because Jessica had a work meeting. I waited at the gate, eager to see my little grandson. When he came out, his eyes lit up seeing me, but then quickly dimmed. "Grandma, where's Mommy?" "She's working, sweetie. She asked me to pick you up." Gabriel looked around, as if searching for an escape route. "But Grandma Sharon always takes me for ice cream after school." "I can take you for ice cream too," I smiled, extending my hand. He hesitated before taking it. "Okay, but don't tell Mommy we had sweets, okay? She said you don't know what's good for kids." Those words stung, like a slap. But I just smiled, held his hand a little tighter, and promised our secret as we walked to the nearest ice cream shop. That night, when Jessica came to pick Gabriel up from my apartment, she barely stepped inside. "Did he eat properly? You didn't give him any sweets, did you? We're trying to control his sugar." Gabriel lowered his head, our secret weighing on his small shoulders. "Just dinner," I lied, protecting my grandson. "Meatloaf and mashed potatoes, just like you asked." She nodded, suspicious, and hurried out, pulling Gabriel by the hand. He looked back once, waved shyly. That was the last time they brought him to me. The following weeks were filled with unanswered calls and excuses for cancelled visits. "We're busy. Gabriel has too much homework. We're going away for the weekend." Until that fateful Sunday with the bread pudding. When I saw their house full, the table set for a family lunch, a family I, apparently, was no longer a part of, something broke inside me. But still, I kept smiling, kept trying. And then came Gabriel's birthday, 7 years old. I'd saved for months to buy him the bike he wanted so badly. But when I called to confirm the party time, and heard David say it would be something small, just for his friends and their parents, I felt the floor disappear beneath my feet. "Jessica's parents will be there because they helped organize everything," he explained, as if that justified my exclusion. "You can come by on Sunday to give him his present." That night, sitting alone in my living room, looking at the red bike leaning against the wall, I made a decision. I put the bike away in the storage closet and instead prepared the photo album. And I took out the yellow envelope I'd kept for years, ever since Frank passed. That apartment where we raised David, that I'd kept rented out all these years, saving every penny for the future. A future I'd imagined shared, full of family Sundays and noisy birthdays. When David told me on that porch that I shouldn't come back for a while, I looked at him and saw only a man who had forgotten who he was. And now, 3 days after that conversation, he was on his way to my house. What would I say? What would he say? Would he come alone or bring Jessica? Or worse, was this just about the apartment? About money? About papers to sign? The doorbell rang, cutting through my thoughts. I took a deep breath, smoothing the simple dress I was wearing. I walked slowly to the door, feeling the weight of each step. I opened the door and there he was, my son, alone. His eyes were red, like when he was a child after crying in secret. He held a package in his hands, the photo album I'd given to Gabriel. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking. I didn't answer. I just opened the door wider, inviting him in. As I always had. As I always would. He stepped inside, looking around as if seeing the apartment for the first time. Maybe he was. Sometimes, you have to lose something to truly see it. "Want some coffee?" I asked, falling into our old routine. David nodded, sitting on the worn sofa. As I prepared the coffee in the small kitchen, I heard a sound I hadn't expected. Muffled sobs. I walked back into the living room and found my son. My big boy, with his face in his hands, crying like I hadn't seen him cry since he was a teenager. "Why, Mom?" he choked out. "Why didn't you ever tell me about the apartment? Why keep it a secret all these years?" I sat beside him, feeling the weight of age in my tired bones. "Because some things don't need to be said, David. Some things you just do, out of love." He lifted his face, his eyes searching mine. "I've been an idiot, haven't I?" I didn't answer right away. So many possible responses flashed through my mind. So many accusations I could make. So many hurts I could expose. Instead, I took my calloused hands, cupping his soft ones, hands that had never known hard labor. "You're my son," I finally replied, "and you always will be, no matter what." David squeezed my hands as if seeking strength in them. "Jessica and I, we haven't been doing well, Mom. For months, maybe years." I waited for him to continue, sensing there was more to his pulling away than I'd imagined. She thinks you influence me too much, that Gabriel is too attached to you, that we need to build our own family without interference. Each word was a small stab, but I kept my expression neutral. "And you, son, what do you think?" He let go of my hands and stood up, walking to the window. Outside, the city continued its frantic pace, indifferent to the dramas unfolding within its homes. "I don't know what I think anymore, Mom. I just know that when I saw that envelope, when I understood what you'd done all these years, I felt like the worst son in the world." I got up too, walking over to him. I placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling him as tense as he'd been on the day of his first big exam. "You're not the worst son in the world, David. You're just human. We all make mistakes." He turned to me, his eyes still damp. "How can you forgive me so easily? After everything I said? After keeping you from Gabriel?" I smiled, feeling a tear escape the corner of my eye. "Because I'm your mother, and mothers forgive. Always." David hugged me then, tight, like he hadn't in years. I felt his body tremble with choked back sobs, while my own tears wet his shirt. "What do I do now, Mom?" he asked, his voice muffled against my shoulder. "Jessica won't accept this. She won't want you back in our lives." I pulled back a little, cupping his face in my hands, just like I did when he was small and needed comforting. "You do what your heart tells you, son. But remember this. Gabriel deserves to know his whole family. He deserves to know where he comes from. He deserves to have his grandma in his life." David nodded, wiping his tears with the back of his hands, just like he did as a kid. "I'll fix this, Mom. I promise." We went back to the sofa, the coffee forgotten in the kitchen. He opened the photo album he'd brought, and we started flipping through it together. Each page, a memory. Each picture, a story. "Remember this day?" I asked, pointing to a photo of him at 10, holding a school chess trophy. "How could I forget? You skipped work to see me compete. Your boss almost fired you for it." I smiled, surprised he remembered that detail. It was worth it. Always was. We kept turning pages, laughing at some photos, falling silent at others. When we got to the last pages, the ones with baby Gabriel and me, David paused. "He asks about you, you know, even after everything. He asks when Grandma's coming to visit again." My heart squeezed and expanded all at once. And what do you tell him? David closed the album, looking at the simple cover I decorated with so much love. "I tell him soon, but I guess now I can tell him the truth." "And what's the truth, son?" He looked at me, a new determination in his eyes. That Grandma never really left. That she's always been waiting, with the door ajar. In that moment, I knew that regardless of what happened with David and Jessica, regardless of the choices my son would still make, something had shifted. A door that was closing was now opening again. And I'd be there, just like I'd always been, waiting, with a warm bread pudding in my hands and my heart wide open to welcome my family back. Even if that family came in pieces now, in hidden visits, in hurried calls. Even if I had to rebuild my relationship with my grandson, brick by painstaking brick. Because some things don't need to be said. Some things you just do. For love. David stayed with me until dusk. We talked about everything and nothing, like we hadn't in years. When he finally got up to leave, he seemed lighter, as if he'd shed a massive weight. I gotta go, Mom. Jessica's probably wondering where I am. I nodded, walking him to the door. Are you gonna tell her about our conversation? He hesitated, his hand already on the doorknob. I'll try. I don't know how she'll react. Don't expect miracles, son. Some things take time. He hugged me one last time before stepping out. In the hallway, he turned back. Can I bring Gabriel next weekend? Just the three of us. Maybe for some ice cream? I smiled, feeling a hope I didn't dare name. Of course. I'll be waiting. I closed the door after he left and leaned against it, exhausted. The day's emotions had drained my strength. But there was something different now. A small light at the end of the tunnel I hadn't seen before. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Saturday crept in slowly, each day of the week dragging by as if testing my patience. I cleaned the apartment 3 times, even though it was already spotless. I bought ingredients to make chocolate chip cookies, Gabriel's favorites. I even pulled out some of David's old board games I'd kept, thinking my grandson might enjoy them. At 10 in the morning, the phone rang. It was David. Mom, we won't be able to make it today. My heart sank. Did something happen? I waited. His hesitation was palpable through the line. Jessica found out about our plans. It wasn't an easy conversation. I understand, I said, a hollowness in my chest that no practiced calm could hide. But I promise we'll figure this out. I just need more time. After we hung up, I sat in the living room armchair, staring at the cookie ingredients on the kitchen table. So close, yet a universe away. That's when I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. A memory from when David was about 12, shortly after Frank passed. It was a Sunday morning, and I was exhausted after a whole week working 2 jobs. David came into my room, already dressed, eager. Mom, you promised we'd go to the park today, remember? There's that science fair I want to see. I'd completely forgotten. My body ached, my eyes barely open from fatigue. Honey, Mom's really tired today. Can we put it off until next Sunday? His face crumpled in disappointment. But you promised! And next Sunday the fair will be over. I sat up in bed, rubbing my eyes. The disappointment on his face was unbearable. All right, give me half an hour to get ready. While I was getting dressed, I heard noises in the kitchen. When I came out of the room, I found David in the tiny kitchen, trying to make me a simple breakfast. Toast, butter, a glass of milk. I made it for you, Mom, to give you more energy. That simple gesture, it was enough to break me. I had to turn my face, hide the sudden wellings of tears. My boy, so small, already trying to take care of me. We went to the park that day. The science fair was modest, but David's eyes sparkled at every experiment. In the late afternoon, as we were walking home, he held my hand and said, "Thanks, Mom. It was the best day." Back in the present, I realized I was crying. Where was that sensitive boy who worried about my tiredness? Who made a simple breakfast to give me energy? Somewhere inside that man, that tired, adult man, the boy still had to exist. The phone rang again, interrupting my thoughts. I answered, expecting to hear David's voice, maybe with more excuses. "Hello? Grandma!" Gabriel's voice, small, bright, caught me completely by surprise. "Gabriel, my sweet boy, is that you?" "Yeah. Daddy let me call you from his phone. He's in the bathroom right now." My heart pounded. Was he calling behind her back? "It's so good to hear your voice, sweetheart. I've missed you so much." "Me too, Grandma. Daddy said we were going to visit you today, but Mommy got mad." I closed my eyes, imagining the scene. "That's okay, my love. We can see each other another day." "Grandma, I got a new bike for my birthday. It's red, just like the one we saw in the store once." I smiled, remembering the bike I'd bought and hidden in the back storage room. "That's wonderful, Gabriel. Have you learned to ride it yet?" "Sorta. Daddy's teaching me, but he doesn't have much time." I heard a voice in the background. David, probably coming back from the bathroom. "Gotta go, Grandma. Love you." Before I could answer, the call ended. Tears, hot and free, streamed down my face. "I love you too, my little one," I whispered into the silent phone. 2 weeks bled into silence. My calls went straight to voicemail. Texts were met with terse replies. "We're busy. I'll call you later." The fragile hope that had just begun to sprout withered with each passing day. Then, one Wednesday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find David, breathless as if he'd run up the stairs. His eyes were red-rimmed and swollen, like he hadn't slept in days. "Can I come in, Mom?" I stepped aside, worried by his appearance. "What happened, son?" He came in, flopping onto the sofa like he used to as a teenager when he had problems. "Jessica and we're done, Mom." I sat beside him, surprised. "What do you mean? It's over?" David ran his hands over his face, looking 10 years older. "Things haven't been good for a long time. After I found out about the apartment, after our talk, I realized a lot of things. I tried to talk to her about you, about how unfair I'd been. She wouldn't hear a word of it." He paused, taking a deep breath. "Last night we had a terrible fight. She said I had to choose, either you or her. Said she didn't want Gabriel growing up, confused about family loyalties." I felt a pang in my chest. I never wanted to be the reason for a separation. "David, I don't want you to destroy your marriage because of me." He looked at me, fierce determination in his eyes. "It's not because of you, Mom. It's because of me. Because of Gabriel." I realized I was letting her alienate my son from the only grandma who's always been there. That I was letting her pull me away from my own mother. He paused again, his voice choked up. "When she made me choose, that's when I realized there was no choice at all. Family is family. And you, Mom, you're the most loyal family I've ever known." I couldn't hold back the tears. I hugged my son, feeling his body shake with suppressed sobs. "Where's Gabriel?" I asked when we separated. "With her parents. I'll pick him up tomorrow. I'm at a hotel, temporarily." I stood up immediately. "No way. You're staying here with me." "Mom, I don't want to be a bother." I put my hands on my hips, taking on that stance he knew well from childhood. David, since when are you a bother in your mother's house? Your room is exactly the way you left it. He smiled for the first time since he arrived. A sad but genuine smile. Thanks, Mom. That night, I made his favorite dinner. The spaghetti and meatballs he used to beg for as a kid. As we ate, David seemed lost in thought. A penny for your thoughts, honey? He pushed his food around his plate before answering. How blind I'd been. How I'd let Jessica and her parents convince me that your simple way of life, your modest home, your handmade gifts, were somehow less. He put his fork down, looking me in the eyes. Remember when I was about 14 and wanted those expensive sneakers all the boys at school had? I nodded, remembering perfectly. You worked overtime for 2 months to afford them. When you finally gave me the gift, I was so happy I slept with those sneakers next to my bed. He smiled at the memory. What you don't know is that 3 days later, a boy from school, a rich doctor's kid, showed up with the exact same sneakers, only the newer model. I was crushed, thinking mine were already outdated. He paused, shame evident on his face. That night, I cried in my room, feeling inferior. You heard me and came to see what was wrong. Do you remember what you told me? I shook my head, not recalling that specific episode. You said, "Son, some people have more money. Others have more love. Some can buy the latest thing. Others give the best of themselves. One day you'll understand the difference." David reached across the table, taking my hand. I think I finally understand, Mom. It just took me too long. The next day, David went to pick up Gabriel. I was anxious all day, tidying and retidying the apartment, baking fresh chocolate chip cookies, getting out games and books. When the doorbell rang, I rushed to open the door. Gabriel was there, holding his father's hand, a small backpack on his back. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Grandma!" He let go of David's hand and ran into my arms. I hugged him tight, feeling his warm little body against mine, the scent of kids' shampoo in his hair. "Oh, my sweet boy, I've missed you so much." Gabriel pulled back a little, looking at me curiously. "Why'd you disappear, Grandma? Mom said you were too busy to visit us." I looked at David, unsure what to say. He nodded slightly as if giving me permission to be honest. "Sometimes, Gabriel, grown-ups have disagreements, but that doesn't mean the love goes away. I was never too busy for you, sweetheart. Never." He seemed to accept that explanation, his attention already drawn to the cookies on the kitchen table. "You made chocolate chip cookies. Can I have one?" "Of course you can. I made them especially for you." As Gabriel ran to the kitchen, David put a hand on my shoulder. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." "You don't have to thank me, son." He lowered his voice so Gabriel wouldn't hear. "Jessica wants shared custody. We're going to have to negotiate a lot in the coming months." One day at a time, David. One day at a time. We spent the afternoon playing old board games, eating cookies and telling stories. Gabriel wanted to hear about when his dad was little, and I delighted in recounting David's mischief, making my grandson laugh out loud. When night came, Gabriel asked, "Are we sleeping here, Daddy?" David nodded. "Yes, we're staying with Grandma for a few days. Then we'll find our own place." Gabriel clapped his hands, excited. "Can I sleep in your bed, Grandma? Like when I was little and used to visit?" "Of course you can, sweetheart." Later, after Gabriel fell asleep, David and I sat on the small balcony of the apartment. The night was clear, star-filled. "What's going to happen now, son?" He sighed, looking up at the sky. "I'm not exactly sure. I know it won't be easy. Jessica's hurt. Her parents are furious. They're going to try and make things difficult. And the apartment? What have you decided to do?" David smiled, turning to me. "I'm going to live there with Gabriel. It's perfect. Close to his school. Spacious enough for the two of us. And it has history, Mom. Our history." I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. The idea of David and Gabriel living in the apartment where I'd raised my son alone, where I'd spent so many nights sewing to pay his tuition. It felt like a circle closing. "Are you sure?" "You could sell it. Buy something more modern." He shook his head, resolute. "Number, I want Gabriel to grow up in that apartment. I want him to know where we came from, what you did for us." We sat in silence for a few minutes, contemplating the stars. "You know, Mom, there's something I never told you." "What? Remember when I was in my senior year of college? And you got sick? That bad pneumonia?" I nodded. It had been a difficult time. I was hospitalized for almost 2 weeks. "I was about to drop out of college to take care of you. I even went to the registrar's office to withdraw." I looked at him, surprised. "Never knew that." "The secretary convinced me to wait a few days. When you started to get better, I gave up the idea. But in those days, while you were in the hospital, I understood for the first time what sacrifice for love truly means." He took my hand, squeezing it gently. "But then I forgot, Mom. I let other voices, other influences, make me forget. Can you forgive me for that?" "There's nothing to forgive, son. You're here now. That's all that matters." The following months weren't easy. David and Jessica's divorce was messy, with disputes over Gabriel's custody, assets, and visitation schedules. Jessica's parents, especially Sharon, did everything to complicate things. There was a particularly tough hearing where Jessica's lawyer tried to use my negative influence as an argument to limit Gabriel's time with me. "The paternal grandmother," the lawyer began, her voice crisp and formal. "Mrs. Carol Miller has demonstrated manipulative behavior, using excessive gifts and treats to alienate the child from his mother and maternal grandparents." I sat in the back, my hands clasped tightly, willing myself to remain composed. David immediately stood up. "That's absurd. My mother's the most decent person I know. She raised a son alone, worked 2 jobs to give me an education, and never, ever spoke ill of anyone to Gabriel." The judge, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, looked at me in the back of the room. "Mrs. Miller, would you like to say something?" I stood up, feeling all eyes on me. Across the room, Jessica and her parents stared at me with harsh expressions. "Your Honor, I'm 67 years old. I've spent my entire life working and taking care of my family. I never had much, but what little I did have, I always shared. I never spoke ill of Jessica or her parents to my grandson. All I want is to watch him grow up, to love him, while I'm still here." The judge nodded, thoughtful. "Thank you, Mrs. Miller. You may sit down." In the end, the judge granted shared custody, with Gabriel passing 1 week with each parent. And most importantly for me, it guaranteed my right to see my grandson regularly, without restrictions. When we left the courthouse, Sharon came up to me while Jessica was talking with her lawyer. "You must be satisfied," she said, her voice laced with resentment. "You managed to separate our daughter from her husband." I looked at that elegant woman with her expensive jewelry and designer clothes, and I felt a mix of pity and weariness. Sharon, I never wanted to separate anyone. I just wanted to be a part of my grandson's life, just like you are. Don't compare me to you, she retorted, adjusting her designer purse on her arm. We're completely different. I smiled, feeling a serenity I hadn't expected. Yes, we are. And yet we both love the same boy. That should bring us closer, not push us apart. She seemed surprised by my answer, but before she could say more, David appeared at my side. Come on, Mom. Gabriel's waiting for us at home. A year passed since that day in court. David and Gabriel settled into the apartment I'd kept for so many years. They renovated it together, painting the walls, replacing the old furniture, but keeping the spirit of the place. Jessica met another man and seemed happier now. With time, the tensions decreased. Gabriel adapted well to the new routine, passing 1 week with his father and 1 with his mother. And me? I gained something I never imagined I'd have again. A family. Every Wednesday, when Gabriel is with David, we have dinner together at their apartment. Sometimes I cook those old dishes David loved as a child. Other times, we order pizza and watch movies together. Gabriel snuggled between us on the couch. On weekends, we often go to the park, the movies, or just stay home playing those board games David loved as a kid. One of those Sundays, while Gabriel was riding his bike at the park, not the red one I bought him, which ended up being too small, but a new one we got him together for his 8th birthday. David sat down next to me on the bench. Mom, remember that day when I gave you the envelope with the apartment deed? Of course I remember. You said it was your last gift, but it wasn't, was it? I looked at Gabriel pedaling ahead of us, his little face concentrated, his tongue between his teeth just like David used to do as a kid. No, son, it wasn't. He followed my gaze to Gabriel. The real gift was time, wasn't it? The time we still have together. I nodded, feeling a peace I hadn't known in a long time. Yes, David. Time is the only gift that truly matters. And as I've learned these past few years, it's never too late to cherish it. Gabriel pedaled back to us, his face red from effort, a huge smile on his lips. Grandma, did you see how fast I am now? I sure did, sweetheart. You're incredible. He hopped off his bike, settling right between David and me on the bench. Grandma, tell us about when Dad broke his arm trying to climb the old oak tree in Mrs. Henderson's yard. I chuckled, sharing a knowing glance with David. That's one of my absolute favorites. Your dad was just about your age then. And so, under the warm glow of that Sunday afternoon, I spun another tale from our past, weaving another thread into the fabric of our future. A future we were, finally, sharing once again. Because when it comes right down to it, the last gift is never truly the last. As long as there's love, as long as there's time, there'll always be another gift to give, another memory to make, another story to tell. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson I've learned in my 67 years. True love never truly ends. It just changes shape, adapts, waits patiently. Like a mother who leaves the door ajar, trusting that one day, her child will find their way back home.